Barely a week after the Senate proceeded on annual recess, the federal lawmakers are hurried back to work. Apart from the fear of a planned nationwide protest scheduled to begin on Thursday, their attention is drawn to two money bills. First is the 2024 Appropriation Amendment Act, which they worked on last week and forwarded to President Bola Tinubu for assent. The lawmakers have discovered errors in the piece of legislation which they quickly need to repeal, reenact. The lawmakers emerged after a closed-door session that lasted roughly 2 hours and expeditiously passed the amendment bill, first, second, and third reading, approving a budget of 35 trillion naira for 2024.
Distinguished colleagues, the Senate in the Committee of Supply considered the Appropriation Act 2024, repeals and reenacted and approved as follows. Long title as recommended.
With similar speed, the Senate considered and passed a bill for an act that seeks to amend the Central Bank of Nigeria Act 2004, increasing CBN's total advances, also known as Ways and Means, to the federal government from 5% to a maximum of 10%. The bill had recommended an increase of up to 15%, but the lawmakers cut it down to 10%. In his lead debate, Senate Leader Okpeyemi Bamidele said the legislation was necessary to provide immediate funds to address budget shortfalls and finance essential government expenditure, especially capital projects.
The very essence of this bill, dear colleagues, is to enable the federal government meet its immediate and future obligation due to the government's increasing needs for funds to finance the budget deficits and other expenses.
The bill enjoyed overwhelming support from lawmakers, with many arguing that the current administration is in a better position to repay the advances.
In terms of revenue performance, I think that we were made to know that the revenues of the federal government is actually is actually improving, to show that the ability of government to continue to fund its operations is actually not in doubt.
The Nigerian capital market is robust enough, and especially with the recapitalization exercise coming up, with or for the banks, that will further deepen and grow the Nigerian capital market. So why not going forward tomorrow, instead of limiting ourselves to ways and means, we can as well leverage on the capital market.
But the clause to restrict the CBN borrowing exclusively to capital projects was roundly rejected.
I agree with my colleague who have thought that it should not be more than 10%. Mr. President, this funding is like a funding gap.
The support of the Senate, and I should be pegged to 10%. It's not about being generous to the federal government. It's about recognizing the fact that all over the world, there are international best practices. If you were to increase the level to 15%, Nigeria would be on its way to that joke between the Ugandan president, Idi Amin, and the CBN governor, when he says, Idi Amin said, go and print more money. And he said, Uganda money will be turned to toilet paper.
The Senate's approval to increase federal government's borrowing from the CBN from 5% to a maximum of 10% comes at a time when the Senate, through an ad hoc committee led by Senator Issa Jibrin, is still probing how the federal government's Ways and Means borrowing totaling 30 trillion naira was expended by the immediate past government of former President Muhammadu Buhari. The amendment of the CBN Act brings to 3 the number of money bills granted accelerated approval by the Senate this year. Omo Bazwai, Arise News.